Snoop Dogg stood casually in the first-class line, dressed in his signature laid-back hoodie and sneakers, a striking contrast to the luxury and formality surrounding him. A man nearby couldn't mask his disdain, his arrogance practically oozing as he sized up Snoop's unassuming appearance. But what happened next didn't just leave everyone on the plane without words. It changed a life in the most unexpected way. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you love inspiring stories with a twist, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's grow together in 2025. The Miami International Airport buzzed with energy. People crisscrossed the sprawling terminals. Announcements filled the air, and luggage wheels hummed over polished floors. Among the chaos stood Snoop Dogg, leaning against a pillar in the VIP lounge check-in line. He wore a laid-back outfit, a crisp, oversized t-shirt, loose jeans, and classic sneakers. His only accessory was a pair of shades perched on his nose, and he carried a small backpack with a frayed strap. Despite his casual demeanor, there was something magnetic about him. It wasn't just his recognizable face, but the effortless confidence and calm he exuded. He took in his surroundings like someone who'd seen it all and learned to find joy in simplicity. Just behind him in line stood Alexander Fairchild, a self-made tech executive in his late 30s. Dressed to impress, Alexander wore a tailored suit, a gold watch, and shoes polished to a mirror shine. His body language practically screamed ambition, from the way he adjusted his tie to the confident way he held his phone. As Fairchild glanced at Snoop, a flicker of disdain crossed his face. VIP lounge, Fairchild muttered with a smirk loud enough for Snoop to hear. Didn't realize they were letting in just anyone these days. Snoop turned his head slightly, peeking over his shades with a raised eyebrow. His expression was calm, but held a touch of humor. "Well, here we are," he replied, his voice a melodic drawl. Fairchild chuckled, clearly expecting a bigger reaction. "Yeah, here we are," he echoed. "No offense, but this place is usually a little more exclusive." Snoop didn't rise to the bait. "Exclusive, huh? Funny how people define that," he said, his tone as chill as a breeze. The line moved forward, and both men presented their tickets. Inside the lounge, the space buzzed with quiet opulence, sleek furniture, soft lighting, and attendants circulating with drinks. To Fairchild's annoyance, the seat next to his was assigned to none other than Snoop. "You've got to be kidding me," Fairchild muttered as he sat down, tossing his briefcase into the corner. Snoop settled into his seat without a care, nodding toward Fairchild with a grin. "Guess we're neighbors for now." Fairchild couldn't let it go. "So, what do you do?" he asked, the question laced with skepticism. Snoop stretched out, adjusting his shades. "I make music, tell stories, try to spread a little love where I can." Fairchild smirked. "Ah, an artist. That's cool, I guess. Though, I gotta say, this lounge usually has, professionals. People working their way to the top." Snoop chuckled, leaning back. "Top of what?" Fairchild gestured grandly. Success. Winning. The real deal." Snoop tilted his head thoughtfully. "Winning, huh? Ain't it funny how the scoreboard changes depending on who's keeping score?" The room had started to quiet. Nearby passengers were subtly tuning into their conversation. "Look," Fairchild said, leaning forward as if to explain the rules of life. "The world's competitive. You show up, prove yourself, and take your place. Not everyone gets it." Snoop met his gaze, his tone easy but steady. "Maybe the real ones don't need to prove nothing. They just let the work speak." The lounge fell silent. A few people exchanged knowing looks, nodding subtly. Fairchild, caught off guard, laughed nervously and raised his glass. "Touché. But let's be real. If you don't stand out, you'll get ignored. That's just the way things work." Snoop took a sip of sparkling water, then set the glass down. "See, the way I see it, You don't need to shout when you're solid. The ones that matter, they already know. The quiet intensity of his words seemed to settle over the room. Fairchild shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the man he had underestimated had just outmaneuvered him with a calm he couldn't break. One of the attendants approached and handed Fairchild a glass of champagne. Fairchild raised it theatrically. "Here's to exclusivity, huh?" he quipped. Snoop smiled, taking another sip of water. "Cheers to clarity, 'cause at the end of the day, all this fancy stuff, it don't matter much when you land." Passengers around them chuckled quietly, their tension breaking into a ripple of respect. Fairchild, now aware of the shifting energy in the room, fidgeted. He opened his mouth to argue, but paused. Something about Snoop's demeanor disarmed him. For the rest of the lounge stay, Fairchild remained unusually quiet, lost in thought. By the time they boarded their flight, the silence between the two wasn't awkward. It was contemplative. As they parted ways at baggage claim hours later, Fairchild caught himself nodding respectfully toward Snoop, unsure of what had just happened, but knowing it had shifted something in him. Fairchild's face remained tense, his fingers tapping on the armrest as if seeking a distraction. Snoop, ever composed, leaned back in his seat, his expression calm yet observant. "You know, Alexander," Snoop began, his voice carrying a certain rhythm that softened the tension. "I get it. The grind, the hustle, proving yourself it's real out here. But sometimes you gotta ask yourself, what's all that worth if you're running on empty inside?" Fairchild shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence faltering. He laughed, a short, defensive sound. "Easy for you to say. Look at you. You've got fame, success, everything handed to you on a silver platter." Snoop chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Oh, my man, you've got me all twisted. None of this came easy. The grind was real, the struggles even more so. But what I've learned along the way, what really counts ain't the trophies on the shelf, or the commas in the bank account." He paused, tapping his chest lightly. "It's what's in here." Fairchild's gaze dropped momentarily to his own chest, then to the wedding band on his finger. He twisted it absently, his defenses lowering, if only slightly. "And what's in there? How does that pay the bills or get you ahead?" "It's not about just getting ahead," Snoop replied, his tone serious now. "It's about staying true to yourself, about the energy you bring to the people around you. You ever stop to think that maybe all this, the competition, the need to one-up everyone, might just be you trying to fill a gap you haven't even admitted is there?" Fairchild frowned, his brow furrowing deeply. "There's no gap. Everything I've done, I've earned. I don't need validation from anyone." Snoop tilted his head slightly, his gaze steady. "Then why does it sound like you're trying to convince yourself more than me?" The words landed heavier than Fairchild expected. He sat back, silent for a moment, as if searching for a retort, but finding none. Around them, the other passengers were no longer discreet in their attention. Some nodded subtly at Snoop's words, others whispering amongst themselves. "Look," Snoop continued, his voice softer now, "you've got your story, your struggles. I'm not here to knock any of that. But real strength ain't about how loud you can flex. It's about what you leave behind when you're done talking, what kind of energy you put out." Fairchild's lips parted, but no words came. He looked at Snoop, his usual sharpness dulled by a growing uncertainty. Finally, he muttered, "You make it sound so simple." Snoop smiled faintly. "It ain't easy, but it is simple. Treat people with respect. Keep it real, and don't let the game change who you are inside." Before Fairchild could respond, a flight attendant approached, her expression slightly hesitant but polite. "Mr. Brodus," she said, addressing Snoop. "The captain asked me to let you know your connection is confirmed. He also sends his regards and says he's a big fan." The murmurs in the cabin grew louder as passengers connected the dots. "Snoop Dogg?" one whispered. Fairchild blinked, the realization hitting him like a wave. "You're Snoop Dogg?" he asked, incredulous. Snoop's smile widened just slightly, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "That's what they call me." Fairchild's posture stiffened. He stammered, "I didn't know. I didn't realize." Snoop's voice remained steady, his tone devoid of judgment. "And why would that matter? Truth is truth, no matter who's saying it. The question is, are you going to hear it?" Fairchild's face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and something deeper. He nodded slowly, the weight of Snoop's words sinking in. "You're right," he admitted quietly. I've been acting like a fool." Snoop leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "No, you're just human. We all get caught up sometimes. What matters is what you do next." The rest of the flight passed in relative silence. Fairchild, once loud and overconfident, sat pensively, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. Meanwhile, Snoop reclined in his seat, headphones on, nodding to a rhythm only he could hear. As they parted ways at baggage claim, Fairchild hesitated before approaching Snoop one last time. "Hey, thanks for not just shutting me down back there." Snoop gave him a nod, his expression warm but composed. "Ain't no thing. Just remember, life's better when you're building people up, not breaking them down." Fairchild nodded back, his respect for the man now genuine. He watched as Snoop walked away, surrounded by fans but still carrying himself with the same calm grace that had diffused the tension hours earlier. For the first time in a long while, Fairchild felt a shift within himself, a crack in the armor he had worn for so long. He glanced down at his hands, his wedding band catching the light, and sighed. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to change. In the end, life isn't about the battles you win against others. It's about the ones you win within yourself. And as Fairchild walked away from the encounter, he couldn't help but think that this flight might have been the start of something new. Over the next few months, this thought stayed with him, growing into a quiet determination to change. He began small, reaching out to colleagues with genuine interest rather than competitiveness, and taking time to listen to his family instead of brushing off their concerns. These shifts, while subtle at first, started to ripple outward. Fairchild noticed that people responded differently. To him, there was less tension in conversations, more collaboration, and an emerging sense of mutual respect. Snoop's words impart a powerful message. Genuine success isn't measured by your accomplishments or the image you project, but by the meaningful impact you create in the lives of others and the world around you. The next time you face a moment of conflict or judgment, let this be a reminder that kindness and humility are timeless virtues. Real change often begins within ourselves. If this story resonated with you, explore more heartwarming stories with us of hope, empathy, and resilience.